That night, I fell asleep with a pencil still in my hand and tulips nodding beside me on the kitchen table. It was the best sleep I'd had in weeks. No dreams of David. No Rayleigh-shaped ghosts tiptoeing through my memories. Just stillness. Peaceful, clean stillness. The next morning the house felt different. Not healed, but lighter. Like I'd exhaled something that had been clogging my lungs for far too long. I opened the windows, brewed coffee again instead of tea, and stood barefoot in the living room surrounded by half-finished paintings and torn paper. And I smiled. It wasn't until noon that I remembered the appointment Callie had made for me weeks ago, the one I swore I'd cancel. A consultation. Fertility options. She had forwarded the link in her usual pushy but loving way. I'd ignored it at first, dismissing it as another false hope. But now, standing in my living room with a half-finished sketch of a free woman, I realized, maybe I wasn't done hoping. Not yet. I clicked the link. Dr. Eliza Caro, fertility specialist. Women's health. IVF. Donor programs. Counseling. It felt terrifyingly real. Like if I hit confirm appointment, I was declaring war on everything David and Ruth had told me about who I was, or wasn't. Like I was standing up and screaming into the void, I still want this. Even if no one stands beside me anymore. So I clicked it. Confirmed. The appointment was for Thursday afternoon. 3 days. I didn't let myself second guess. I just shut the laptop, picked up my sketchbook and went back to the studio. But it stayed with me. Thursday came too fast. I sat in the waiting room, clutching my bag, staring at the fish tank like it might offer some kind of wisdom. My hands were sweaty. I hadn't told Callie I was going. Not because I didn't want her support, but because I needed this to be mine. A decision made in private. Not with anyone else's opinion echoing in my head. Dr. Caro's office was warm. Nothing sterile or cold. She had art on the walls, real art, not prints. One of the pieces looked like it had been painted with grief and joy at once. She extended her hand. Amelia? I'm so glad you came. Her voice was soft but direct. The kind that made you feel like you'd already survived something just by showing up. I almost didn't, I admitted. She smiled. But you did. We sat. She asked questions, not just medical but emotional. My history. My loss. My longing. And then she explained things. Options. Risks. Truths. There's IVF, she said. But with your diminished reserve, your chances with your own eggs are very low. I nodded, expecting that. Then there's donor embryos. Donor eggs or even frozen embryos from couples who no longer need them. I blinked. That hadn't been on my radar. Not really. He saw the hesitation. It's a lot to take in. But it's not impossible. You have more doors than you think. Her words stayed with me. You have more doors than you think. I left the clinic with a folder full of pamphlets and a mind buzzing with possibility. The city felt sharper, louder as I walked back to my car, like someone had dialed up the contrast on everything. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. Instead, I drove to a craft store and bought 3 new sketchbooks. One for grief, one for hope, and one I wasn't sure about yet. That night, I painted something completely different. It wasn't dark. It wasn't loud. It was soft. A crib bathed in morning light. A mobile overhead, its stars spinning in a quiet dance. No baby. Just the possibility of one. And I felt something strange. A pull in my chest I hadn't allowed myself to feel since before the doctor first said infertility, like it was a terminal sentence. I wanted this. Even without David. Even without the perfect nuclear 2-parent picture. I wanted to be a mother. I pulled out the paperwork. Donor embryo. I circled it. And for the first time the dream didn't feel like a knife. It felt like a seed. I didn't tell Callie right away. Not because I didn't trust her, but because this new part of my life felt delicate, like a painting that hadn't dried yet. Touch it too soon and the whole thing smears. So I kept it quiet. I started the process slowly. Blood work, screenings, psychological evaluations. I filled out forms that asked questions no one ever prepares you for. Would you prefer a donor with a similar ethnic background? Education level? Eye color? The truth? I didn't care what they looked like. I didn't care about degrees or test scores. I cared that they were kind. That somewhere out there, a woman had created life, and was willing to offer someone like me a second chance at it. I told Dr. Caro that. She smiled gently and said, "We'll find you someone with heart." Still, there were moments I caught myself looking over my shoulder, wondering if this version of my life, this silent, solitary pursuit of something deeply maternal, made me foolish. I'd spent so long tying the idea of motherhood to my marriage. I couldn't picture it without David for years. But now it felt like it was never really ours to begin with. The dream had always lived in me. I saw it in the way I studied baby strollers in store windows, in the way I held my breath when toddlers passed me in grocery aisles, in how I'd saved the nursery even after I swore I'd never open that door again. It was mine, and I was going to reclaim it. Then on a drizzly Tuesday, everything I'd buried came clawing back. I was in the coffee shop down the street from the studio, sketchbook open, drawing a pair of small baby shoes I'd seen in a window, when I heard my name. Surprised. I turned. David. He looked different. Not drastically but enough. Paler. Eyes a little heavier. His usual confidence tucked behind a wrinkled dress shirt and the faint smell of rain. I blinked. He blinked. We stood there silent for a beat too long. Finally I said, "Do you want to sit?" He nodded. We sat across from each other at my tiny corner table, two people who used to sleep skin to skin and now couldn't meet each other's gaze. He stared at the sketch. "Those for a commission?" "No," I said. "Just something I'm working on." His mouth twitched into a faint smile. "They're beautiful. You always had that gift, turning quiet things into something loud." I didn't answer. I didn't want compliments. I wanted clarity. He ran his hand through his hair. "I'm not sure why I came over. I saw you. Thought maybe." I closed my sketchbook. "You could what? Fix something?" He exhaled. "No. Not fix. Just talk." There was a pause. The clatter of a spoon at the next table. The hiss of the espresso machine. "Rayleigh and I ended things," he said finally. I looked up. He added quickly, "It wasn't working. It was never going to. She wanted something else. And I cut him off. "You already had something real, David. And you threw it away." "I know." His voice was soft, barely above a whisper. I didn't realize until after how much I let outside voices control me, especially my mother. She had all these ideas about what a wife should be, about what we should be. "And you listened," I said, over and over, even when I was breaking. He didn't argue. "Why are you really here?" I asked. "What do you want?" He hesitated. I miss you. I miss us. I miss what we could have been." I stared at him. The man I once thought would be the father of my children. The man who left me in pieces and didn't bother to check if I still breathed. "You didn't fight for me," I said. "I didn't know how," he whispered. "No, David. You didn't want to." The words hung there. Heavy. True. "I'm trying to be better," he said. "I believe you," I said quietly. "But that doesn't mean I'm waiting." He swallowed. "Are you with someone?" I blinked. Surprised. "No," I said. "But I don't need someone to make me whole anymore." I didn't tell him about the clinic, the donor, the folder on my desk labeled embryo profiles. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wasn't ready to let him into that part of me again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded slowly. "I hope you're happy." "I'm getting there." He stood. "If you ever want to talk again, I'd like that." I didn't promise him anything. He left. And I sat there with my sketchbook, opened it slowly, and drew a pair of tiny hands reaching toward light. Then I wrote beneath it, "For the ones we still believe in." I watched him walk out, the bell above the cafe door chiming behind him like an afterthought. It didn't feel triumphant. It didn't feel satisfying. Just real. David was a man I had once memorized down to the way his breath shifted in sleep. And now he was a stranger I'd survived. That was something. I finished my coffee cold, my fingers tapping against the rim of the mug, still tracing the shape of the hands I'd just drawn. It felt symbolic somehow, those tiny fingers reaching toward something they couldn't name. Hope, maybe. I went straight from the cafe to the studio, ignoring the drizzle that misted over my face. My phone buzzed twice with texts from Callie, something about a gallery invite and a terrible date she needed to vent about, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed silence. In the studio I pulled out the folder again. The one Dr. Caro had given me. I laid out the profiles side by side. The donors didn't have names, just numbers and notes. Education history. Medical records. Personality traits. Hobbies. It felt strange reading about women who had given their selves to science. Maybe with pain, maybe with grace, but never knowing their faces. I searched each page not for intelligence or beauty but for warmth. For some quiet sign that they had loved life enough to help someone else create it. One file caught my eye. Donor 2174. He loved music. Taught piano to children. Carried a recessive gene for green eyes like mine. No major health issues. Her psychological screening report included the line, compassionate disposition. Expresses strong family values and desire to help others. I didn't know her name but I whispered, thank you, into the empty studio. Maybe I didn't need to know her to love the part of her I might carry forward. The process from there moved fast. Quicker than I expected. Within a month I was back in Dr. Caro's office, signing consent forms, taking hormone injections, preparing my body to receive something it had once rejected. My mornings began with needles and ended with progesterone. And my evenings, they belonged to the nursery. Yes, the nursery. I'd opened that door again. Hesitant at first, like I was stepping into a haunted room. But it didn't swallow me like I feared. The dust was thick. The air smelled of thyme and cotton. But the crib was still there. So were the pastel paintings I'd done on the walls during better days. One for a boy, one for a girl. Just in case. I didn't repaint them. I added to them. Sketches of stars and oceans. Bears with soft eyes. I even started a mural of a woman sitting under a tree, 2 children at her feet, both reaching for a dandelion she held out in her palm. That woman didn't look like me. But she could be me. Hope settled into my bones like something I could finally call mine. Then a phone call. It was Dr. Caro. Her voice bright, firm. The transfer went well. We'll need to wait a few days before testing for implantation. Wait. The word stabbed through me. I'd waited for years. Waited through doctor visits, miscarriages, David's cold apologies, Ruth's dismissive glances, Rayleigh's shadow. But this time, the waiting didn't feel powerless. As this time I had chosen it. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I once cried on the floor with a broken pregnancy test in my hand. I touched my stomach, soft, unfamiliar under the hormones, and whispered a quiet prayer to no one in particular. Please stay. Please grow. That night I answered Callie's texts. She showed up with wine, which I declined, and her infamous box of leftover Thai food. We sat on the studio floor, surrounded by paint tubes and donor files and half-finished canvases. You look different, she said finally. How? Like someone who got struck by lightning but decided to dance in the storm anyway. I laughed. That makes no sense. It makes all the sense. We didn't talk about David. I didn't need to. She saw the shift. I handed her one of the sketches I'd done earlier that day. 2 children holding hands beneath a tree. One had a mop of curls. The other a crown of dandelions. Callie's eyes softened. Have you picked names? I hadn't. Not really. But a few lived quietly in the back of my mind. Names I'd never dared speak aloud. Now they began to rise. Maybe, I said. One for the stars, one for the sea. She smiled. And we sat there in the quiet studio, the air thick with promise, while somewhere inside me something tiny and miraculous might just be growing. Waiting has a strange rhythm. It isn't linear, it loops. Doubt circles hope like vultures, and sometimes the silence between a question and its answer can be the loudest sound in the world. The morning after Callie left, I sat alone in the nursery, hands resting gently on my belly. I wasn't sure if I felt anything. Was it too early? Too soon? Too hopeful? I remembered something Dr. Caro had told me during our last session. Every pregnancy begins with belief. You won't see anything, not at first, but you have to believe it's there. You have to let it live inside your mind before it grows inside your body. So I believed. Or I tried. I went back to painting. The tree on the nursery wall now stretched further, its branches curling outward, brushing the ceiling, forming a canopy over the entire room. 2 children danced beneath it. One chasing butterflies. The other sitting cross-legged, painting the trunk red. I still hadn't named them. Not aloud. But I whispered possibilities into the quiet. Elio, Mir, Jude, Lenny. Names that felt like breath. Like they belonged to someone real, someone I hadn't met but already missed. I didn't tell David. He hadn't reached out again since the coffee shop, and I hadn't expected him to. A part of me wondered if seeing me had been enough to shake something loose in him, some realization of what he'd thrown away, but another part suspected he simply wanted closure. Well, I was building something else. Not closure. A beginning. On the 4th day after the transfer, I stood barefoot on the back porch as the sun cracked open the horizon. The birds were already busy, their chatter rising like a hymn. I held a warm mug of ginger tea and let the morning wind brush over me. And then the phone rang. It was the clinic. I didn't move right away. I stared at the screen, pulse thudding in my throat, fingers numb. Whatever lived on the other end of that line would change the direction of my life. It was a yes. Or a no. It was everything. I answered. Amelia, the nurse said, voice calm and practiced. We've received your results. I braced myself. Against the wall. Against the air. It's positive, she said gently. Congratulations. You're pregnant. Time didn't stop. It fractured. I didn't cry at first. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, heart roaring in my chest. Pregnant. Me. Pregnant. I whispered thank you 3 times before the nurse gently walked me through the next steps. Follow-ups, blood tests, rest. She reminded me that it was early, but everything looked good. When the call ended, I stared out at the trees in my backyard. For once, they didn't look barren or cold. They looked like they were waiting with me. I was going to be a mother. The words didn't feel real, so I said them again out loud. I'm going to be a mother. And this time I wept. I called Callie first. She screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. She promised cake, flowers, and illegal levels of excitement. She said she was coming over whether I liked it or not. Then I did something strange. I opened a blank canvas. And instead of sketching babies or trees or butterflies, I painted a storm. Violent blues. Sharp reds. Shattered silhouettes. It was the pain, the anger, the betrayal, all of it. Every fracture I'd survived to get to this moment. When I finished, I stepped back, hands trembling. It was hideous. And it was perfect. I hung it in the hallway just outside the nursery. A reminder of what had been. A reminder that life grows from ruin too. That afternoon, I received a message. From David. I don't know why I'm reaching out. I just thought of you today. Hope you're okay. I stared at it. I didn't reply. He didn't know. He didn't know that while he'd been chasing ambition and approval, I'd been chasing hope. And now I had it. Breathing inside me. Quietly forming cells and possibilities. I placed my hand over my abdomen again. I've got you, I whispered. The nursery smelled of lavender and something faintly electric, like something new being born. I hadn't picked names yet, but I was getting closer. And they were already here, even if only in the hush between heartbeats. The nausea came in waves, unwelcome but oddly reassuring. It meant something was happening. Something real. I learned to live between meals and bland crackers, between short naps and longer moments of disbelief. My body had become a vessel, fragile, sacred, unpredictable. Sometimes I pressed my fingers just below my navel and whispered stories to them. Stories about courage and about not giving up. Stories I would one day tell them when they asked how they came to be. I still hadn't told David. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because the truth belonged to me first. On a rainy Thursday morning, I arrived early to the gallery where Callie had set up one of my pieces. The storm painting, no less. The room smelled of varnish and anticipation. Artists moved like ghosts, adjusting light, perfecting placements. My painting sat in a corner, commanding without begging. It was the only one that didn't feature a face or a flower or a hopeful cliché. It bled. And still it stood. It's brutal, said a voice behind me. And beautiful. Like you. I turned. Callie grinned, holding 2 coffees, her hair in a knot of chaos and eyeliner smudged from what I could only assume was another date gone wrong. I meant the painting, but I guess both apply. Flattery won't get you out of retelling last night's disaster, I said, taking the decaf latte she offered. She sighed. Let's just say if a man tells you on a first date that his mom still folds his laundry, run. I laughed, despite the queasiness curling in my gut. This laughter, art, the quiet beating of 2 hearts inside me. It felt like healing. Until the door opened behind us. And Rayleigh walked in. I hadn't seen her in a while. She looked different. Hollowed out. Still beautiful, yes, but it was a brittle kind of beauty. like glass that had seen too many hands leave fingerprints without staying long enough to clean them off. Callie stiffened beside me. Rayleigh's eyes scanned the room, landed on the painting and then on me. Of all things, she smiled. "I was hoping I'd run into you," she said. Hope. That word again. I was beginning to resent how easily people used it without understanding the cost. "I didn't realize you were into art," I said coolly. "I'm not. But David mentioned the gallery. Said your name might be showing up again." She tilted her head. "He's been thinking about you." I said nothing. "Not yet." She stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were conspirators in a story she didn't understand. "He regrets it, you know. Leaving. He said it all the time." Callie's hand gently brushed mine, steadying me. I studied Rayleigh, the woman David had chosen when I couldn't give him a child. The woman who, by her own ambition and design, had pulled him from our bed into hers. "I'm not interested in David's regrets," I said. "He made his choices." Her smile faltered. "I left him. Because he became someone I didn't recognize," she said. Moody. Detached. He started talking about family again. About wanting more. A baby even. I wasn't built for that. Never claimed to be. I saw it then, how the slow collapse of their fantasy happened. The unraveling of two people who thought desire could replace depth. "I guess I was the detour," she added with a weak laugh. "No," I said quietly. "You were the mirror." She blinked. "What?" "You showed him who he really was. And who he wasn't." She didn't reply. Didn't need to. Her silence said enough. She had nothing left to defend. When she left, Callie exhaled so loudly the nearest gallery assistant looked over. "Holy hell," she muttered. "Is it wrong I wanted to pour my coffee on her boots?" "She's not the enemy," I said. Callie raised an eyebrow. "You're a better woman than I am." "No," I whispered. "Just tired of bleeding over people who only ever handed me paper cuts." That night I painted again. But not storms. This time I painted 2 small feet beneath a blanket of stars. One set bigger than the other. Beside them a pair of boots. Mine. Worn but facing forward. I signed the corner with a single word. Becoming. And for the first time in months I thought, maybe I was. Enough for now. Check out part 3. I will continue from where we left off.